Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Big T, right here with all of you today, and welcome to episode number 314 of the Beyond the Ring with Big T Wrestling podcast, right here today for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. I'm so honored and privileged to be here today with all of you, everybody. I really am. I'm so honored and privileged to be here with my guest. As I've been advertising on my podcast week after week now for the past 3 weeks, this big four-part interview is getting started today, folks. And I'd like to welcome in my very special guest for today, and actually, the next 4 weeks or so, whenever we can do this. Mr. Erik Watts is here with us today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How about you?
I'm doing great. I've been really excited, to finally get you on here and talk with you about everything. And we got a four-part series that we discussed about doing. And actually, today we're at part number one, the beginning. So
Right.
let's kind of kick it off here and get everybody into it. Let's start at the beginning. When you were born and grown up as a kid, I know a lot of people have that question. What was it like growing up as the son of Cowboy Bill Watson? What was your childhood?
Yeah. So my childhood was phenomenal. I was so blessed. My mother, real quick caption. My mother was raised in a country called Estonia, a very independent, beautiful, free country. And then, and early in her childhood, Russia came in, which is their a neighbor and their huge country, of course, and said, "Hey, you know what? Why don't we put some like some tanks and stuff to help protect you in case other people want to come in and mess with you guys? We'll give you some protection." And they're like, "Okay." Came in and then turned the tanks and took the country over, which they got their freedom back later on. But when that happened, her parents, all entrepreneurs, they owned their own companies and businesses. And for religious reasons and other reasons, they wanted to be in an independent country to do what they want, believe in what they want. So they grabbed a whole bunch of jewelry and snuck out. The father got caught in the escape. They bartered with a boat that had been hit in the war. It made it to Germany, and there they stayed 7 years in deportation camps, which were like concentration type camps, turned into deportation camps. And they could have gotten over faster to America, but they wanted to come as a family. So if you kind of think about this, very independent, then there's Cowboy Bill Watts, right? And so you've got him. He's a strong-willed, strong-headed, fierceful, highly motivated entrepreneur himself, an individual himself. And so that was the household I was raised in. My mother saying, "You can do all things. There's nothing you cannot achieve." And then my dad was on the road because he was a working owner, and so he was traveling most all the time when I was young. I mean, you know, he was guaranteed to be in about 4 times a month, no matter what, because he was signing the checks to get out to the wrestlers and paying bills and things like that. And so off and on, he was gone a lot, as I was with my children. I mean, my first year, I wrestled over 305 days. My first year at WCW. So a lot of people see TV and they think it's just TV, or how they don't know how intense it is. I think WWE, even pre-pandemic, had cut down the roster. I mean, the traveling to like 250. People are like, 250. Yeah, 250 sounds like a lot unless you're averaging over 300. And so it's very tough on the road, beat up all the time. So, but it's kind of, I guess that our family was so, we never acted nor thought we were above or below anybody, and we're very tied in the community. But I was in a very rural city, also being raised, so not a neighborhood. I mean, I remember, to get to my house, you went off the road and you were 3 miles on gravel road just to get to my house, and you only passed maybe 5 houses or 6 houses, mainly, ranches, or not ranches per se, but big fields with corn or cows or horses or sheep or whatever someone's growing or doing, because you're around a lot of farmers. One of the largest farmers in the nation is called Conrad Farms, and it was literally probably 3 or 4 miles from our house, and they had thousands of acres of fields. of vegetables and fruits. But when we went to school, no one, we didn't treat anyone different. They didn't treat us different. Um, so you just felt like anybody else. Um, However, it was very driven. We were very driven at our house. So a lot of people think that we were eating, breathing pro wrestling. No, we all love pro wrestling. We enjoyed pro wrestling. We respected pro wrestling because um, it's what allowed us to live the life we lived. And that's the business my father was in. But all of us kids are severe entrepreneurs. I mean, my first business was at 12 years old when I opened my first firework business at 12. And so, we had our own stuff, own sports, own education. Education was huge in our house. It wasn't, I hear kids talking all the time now about, oh man, I have a 3.0 or I have a 2.0, I'm thinking, I don't even remember having the option. I remember the fact that we were expected to make all A's. So yeah. I don't really know what all my brothers made, but my older brother tested out genius. My sister, I mean, everyone did very well in school, but I didn't think anyone was. I mean, I didn't look at it like who's smart and who's not. We were just expected to do well because my mom made school so easy for us. She goes, yeah, you just read the books, you study, and you test on what is in the book. There's nothing that's outside these books. So as long as you read and study and work on learning the material, it's easy. And guess what? School is just really easy. And just like any other kids, we had major chores. I mean, we had cows and we had horses and we had things to take care of at the house. And then on the weekends when wrestling was in town, like every 3 weeks ish in Tulsa, even the young age, pull down the ring, put up the ring. There was always a task to do. And as you got older, it went into, doing the audio, doing the lights, checking on security, checking the ticket takers, filming, holding the camera. So we were involved in the business. The only part of the business that we weren't allowed to be in was to get in the ring, because it was my mother's decision with my father that we would never get in the ring and never learn the total amount of being in the ring business. But she wanted us to know everything else, marketing, advertising, R&D, insurances, risks. She wanted us to know the whole gamut, but she did not want us to know about all the wrestling, because so many of our friends that were in the business and or owners, the Gagnes, Vern Gagne, Mr. Graham, Von Eriks, all the way down to your Blackjack Mulligans and Dusty Rhodeses and all these people. A lot of these people entered their children into wrestling as soon as possible. The old school way was to get them refereeing, but some of these people had their kids refereeing at 14 years old, 15 years old. There's some guys that were breaking in the business at 16, 17 years old. And my mother, when she came over, speaks 7 languages, but it was a little weird in Oklahoma hearing someone with such an accent, right? And so she worked her way through school, but after high school, she became Miss America Bandstand, and then she got some huge modeling contracts, and inevitably that's how my dad and her met back up. My dad went to college at Oklahoma. 3 years after Oklahoma, he went to the Houston Oilers. There he knocked out the coach, and so he was traded to Minnesota Vikings, and that's where a guy named Vern Gagne had heard about this beast in football and came and said, "Hey son, have you ever thought about pro wrestling? I heard you also wrestled at the University of Oklahoma." And he got into wrestling through being at the Minnesota Vikings. But to bring you back, so to being raised, yes, I guess we knew how popular my dad was based on how some of our friends acted when they got to go with us. But we were always so busy working, and we didn't always have time to ask friends. But yeah, when we asked friends, man, yeah, can we please go? Can we go? And we went. And so he was ultra famous everywhere we went. Again, I saw his fame more when we would travel for events. Not that he wasn't famous, but around the people that we knew, I guess just everyone didn't go goo goo gaga in front of us. I think they did it more privately. Whereas if I was in New Orleans, we literally had to have security around us to walk Bourbon Street and things like that because the mobs would come to him in droves, right? So then you can really see what the fame is and all this. So going through college, it was just about having a plan, and my plan was to go to college and either pick a basketball scholarship, an amateur wrestling scholarship, a football scholarship, because I didn't want my parents paying for anything. I wanted to earn my way through, and I didn't want to come out with debt. So the only way I could do it was an academic or athletic scholarship. I had offers in everything from academics to athletics, and I was offered scholarships in all three sports.
Wow.
So, I came to a thought. I'm like, well, I don't need amateur wrestling because, the furthest you can go to the Olympics, it's once every 4 years. I've wrestled with a lot of those guys because my dad did a lot of sponsoring of amateur wrestling. We had a huge wrestling workout room at our house with throwing dummies and crash mats. The Olympic team would come spend some time every once in a while there and work out. The University of Oklahoma would come by. Oklahoma State would come by. So we're immersed into amateur wrestling. But I'm like, if one day I want to be a pro wrestler, I don't have to go. I can only the only thing I can do in amateur wrestling back then was become ultimately an Olympian and then pro wrestling. And you didn't have to be an Olympian to pro wrestle, if that makes sense. Now, I might have gone to wrestle had there been a way to be paid to fight, hence UFC. So, which I love. So if UFC was back in the day, I might have taken a different path. I might have gone amateur wrestling that way. Basketball, I'm 6'6". Oklahoma, it didn't matter. I was pretty rough in there, and so they would always stick me at forward or center. And to be honest with you, there are no 6'6" forwards or centers. There's only one that I know that I thought was awesome was the mound round to rebound, Charles Barkley. And they said he was 6'6", but I'm telling you, he could jump. He could jump out of the gym. I could jump, I could dunk, but I couldn't jump, or I wasn't that explosive. I was just a finesse player. So my offers there weren't to Division I schools, and rightfully so. They were the smaller schools, and I had not been playing guard enough to transfer my game to that. So I said, "Hey, football." And I put my goals to be a Heisman Trophy winner and win a national championship and go in the draft, and so that was my pursuit. And what's crazy is nothing ever changed. It was all business all the time. So I remember the coach when I went to Louisville. I had an all-star game to play in, all-state game to play in. Then they have what they call the Oil Bowl, and they took the best of Texas high school versus the best of Oklahoma high school, and they played. Man, everyone wanted to play those games, right? That's like the crescendo to your senior year. You're ready. I remember the coach going, "Son," he goes, "You're not playing any of those games." I go, "Excuse me." He goes, What does it matter if you want to be a national champion in college and a Heisman Trophy winner? If that's your goals, what does winning a few games, more games, signify in your career? I said, well, realistically, it's not the All-State. I really want to play the Oklahoma Texas just to show Texas that we're better, And he goes, "That's not a national championship." And I go, "So what do you want?" He goes, "Well, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you you're gonna do. What day's your graduation?" And I told him, I can't remember whether it was May 15th, May 18th, May 19th. He goes, "Okay, so I want you to walk, and then I want you to go home, and the next morning pack your bag, and I want you to show up on campus and enroll in summer school." And I'm thinking to myself, when you've busted your rear end, the summer's when you're gonna let loose with all your buddies and just relax because all you ever did was studied and worked in the field and busted your butt. So you wanted that 2 or 3 months to sit there and I don't know, enjoy your life. But it hit me, and he was so right. I'm like, "You're right." So I pulled out all the bowl games and graduated and packed my car. And there's no GPS back then. There's no cell phones back then. We had huge.
Yeah, Road Atlas.
Rand McNally, and Oklahoma's going to be page like 37, and Kentucky's going to be page whatever, and they're huge pages, and Missouri's on a different page, and so you got to flip while you're going to know, follow the states through to get the highways and get up there, and pack my bags and pack my car, and I think about it. I'm pretty sure, I sat there and had breakfast probably, but I don't know that my dad, I don't know that he walked outside and said, see you later, son. Good luck. I don't know. My mom, I think my mom might have said, so you sure you got everything? All right, well, call us when you get there. Because that's kind of how business was. It was so even going to college wasn't a big deal. It was what I was working for. So it was the next thing to do. Right.
That's right.
It was, there was no huge celebration. I remember driving out of there and showing up, and it's summer school, so there's very few college athletes there, except for the ones that are working on their grades. And I was like, "What in the world did I show up for?" Right? But they had the coaches there. We were ready to start the playbooks. I started running routes, but I also got so much more. I got to get in the gym immediately because all those coaches that are fitness coaches, they're there year round. They don't leave, and so it moved me right into getting my head right, and be ready for the football season so that I could focus totally on it. Got my feet wet in classes already. A matter of fact, I stayed in school every semester, including summers. And in summer, there's actually 2 small semesters in summer. And I only came home one time, and it was to run my fireworks business one time, because it was really lucrative. That fireworks business, I could make like $40,000 in 15 days running my own fireworks stand, because it had its own name and stuff like that. So, and like I said, I was an entrepreneur, I was a business guy. So I said, I'm gonna go knock this out one more time. But other than that, it was all summers. That's why I graduated with my first degree in 3 years. So, you asked me how it was to grow up. Well, it was all business. It was my dad, he raised us with an iron fist. He wanted anyone that tried any of us kids to know that they'll lose. He had some pretty, when I was growing up, I didn't think they were crazy rules, but now people are like, no, that's intense, that's crazy. So if someone picked a fight with one of the brothers and beat the brother, then the brother was supposed to come back and get another brother and go stomp the person's brains out. Now the thing about it is my little brother and me never, I guess we were lucky enough never have the bad end of a fight. I wasn't that guy looking for a fight. My little brother didn't look for a fight, but he loved to fight. My older brother wasn't that Joel, which people see on TV. He wasn't that real fighting type. So he's the only person that I even remember. I think it was one time he got in a fight that he kind of lost the fight. And he was older than us, and he said, "I will beat your ass if you tell my dad, because it will be worse for me if my brothers that are 7th, 8th grade walk up into high school and beat up a senior because he beat me up." And so we kind of sat there, but we were so scared of our dad that we're like, "Hey, if Dad finds out, though, we got to go. We want to go torture this person," because we were more scared of our father than my brother, right? So and there are things looking back at our childhood that were different. I mean, there became a time in which my dad's territory was growing quickly, right? And so he was taking over small territories. And back then, people didn't call a lawyer. I mean, what do you do if another business comes in and they just do bigger business than you, and then you go out of business? There's nothing to sue a person over in the first place. So it did get sketchy. I mean, we got to a point where we had 24-hour police presence at our house. We had double gates. We had a fortress. If alarm went off, we had floodlights that covered over 5 acres that lit up like Six Flags. Everyone had a position and different guns to defend the house. We had our house shot up. We had bombs sent. One guy got all the way into the house, and then we had him. But our housekeeper walked in. My dad had the guy down with a gun in his head, and I know at that time he was it was over for that guy, and she started screaming. She goes, Mr. Watts, you can't kill him. He goes, oh no, I can't. She goes, so what? He goes, so why don't you just leave, and everything's gonna be okay. You just don't even have to say you're here, because my dad was over it. I mean, when you're getting your house shot up and threats and all this other stuff going on, and someone gets deep into your territory, you gotta send a message. And but she said she wouldn't. She just said no, I won't. I can't. I'm not gonna lie. It won't happen. Police came. That guy actually went to prison. The scariest night was one time, and it was just a lucky shot. It was just a lucky shot because our house was set way off the road, probably 150 yards off the road, and we had this really big door, and it had mahogany wood, and had these square glass panels. There's probably like 16 panels on each door. Then we had these huge windows beside. Well, when the alarm went off, I'm kicking out back. I've got my gun because I come around the side and go. But first I check on my sister. Well, I forgot my mom was out of town, and my sister was very young, so she slept with my dad that night. So because she would normally roll out, and we had a 22 Tommy gun for her because she was a little small. So if she's on the floor under the grand piano, she could take out anyone coming in there. Micah's in his position. Joel's in his position. And went and check. And we checked, and nothing was coming. Nothing was happening anymore. And the police come. And by the time the police come, we're coming in there. And I remember, I don't know, 12 years old, man. And it was kind of weird. I didn't think I was scared, but they asked me after they asked me, they asked me like 3 times to put the gun down. But it was so clenched in my hand because I was so frustrated, And when they looked at it, because what freaked my dad out is when he looked, the person shot with a high range rifle, and it went right through one of the glass pieces that was right by the lock. So it almost looked like someone like knocked it out, and we didn't know that it was a gunshot, right? So he's thinking, so it looked like someone broke the window. Come to find out, that shot went through that glass. It went through the sheetrock and lodged in the headboard of my dad's bed, right where my dad and my sister were sleeping. So someone almost luckily, took someone out, but they didn't. So a few times we had people come up and give aliases and try to check us out of school, but that was stupid because everyone knew what was going on. And we had a few times when they tried to take us out on the way to school, with cars, or try to knock us off the road. Just to, and I'm not saying every time someone came at us to kill us. There was plenty of times they tried to kill us. Sometimes, and some of these escalated, they were just trying to scare, And then I think there's a lot going on, like if you come into our territory, we'll kill you, and da da da. So all that's up. But again, I gotta be honest with you on there. It was just every day for us. I mean, I remember, getting a phone call, and this is when the phone calls were really, I'll kill you, we're gonna burn gas on you, we're da da da, And I remember one day, I was probably this time 10, 11, so my little brother was 8.5, and but we knew the calls were gonna happen. The operator knew. So they were recording the calls that were coming to our house anyway, even way back in that day. Not at the house; they were doing it through the switchboard.
Yeah.
And so one day, little brother, because I was trying to answer it as much as I could, and if not, if my older brother was there, him just to filtrate stuff, but people knew what was going on. And I remember Mike going, "That sounds fantastic. That sounds fantastic. So where could we meet? Because I'm gonna shoot you." It goes off on this guy. He goes, "See, we can't even meet." Okay, then don't call, and hung up. And I'm like, Is that what I thought? Yeah, he told us he was going to kill us and all this crap, man. Like if they're going to kill us, let's get this on. and I'm like, okay, hey, you want a sandwich? Or we go. So it was like it was an everyday affair, right? Or not every day, but it was just what happened. Now that wasn't the whole childhood, and it just grew that way as the territory and things intensified. So as an upbringing of my father, it was just the fact that he is one of the most motivated, focused, fierce businessmen and opponents a person would have. And whatever you ever seen in the ring or on TV is about half of what he was at home. So not all the time when he was home was it a happy place. Because sometimes he came off the road and he was banged up and he was hurt. And I remember he'd come home out of 7 or 8 days. We all had different chores and different things to do. And then the next thing, and everyone knew when he'd like to work out when he got home. He'd like to get in the pool or the sauna or do whatever. And it was early in the summer, like it was late spring. So it really hadn't had, we had a heated pool and it was supposed to be maintained in a certain temperature. Well, the pilot light had gone out, and I guess we didn't tell him that there's a pool guy coming out. It's our responsibility. And so, but it wasn't cold. It just wasn't warm enough. He stepped in that pool, and I'm telling you, we got an ass whipping because he'd been so beat up, and his whole head was bandaged. I mean, it was just raw meat, and he was just trying to take, his 1 or 2 days off just to give a rest and get a workout. And he stepped in the pool, and I guess the water was cold enough that his blood started flowing. He came out of the pool. It looked like he was in a Texas road death match with Dusty Rhodes. I mean, he's like, yeah, God, get me Erik, get me Micah. We got our butts torn up. He's like, if I want the pool at a certain temperature, it's a certain temperature all the time, I don't give a shit. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you're right, man. We're trying our best. But he was also the same. I mean, football, basketball, wrestling. When I had a football game on Friday night, a lot of times I didn't get to go out Friday night. My dad wanted me to come home first and go over the game films. so I'm like, I got coaches and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna go over the game films the next day. But if he was in town, he would film the games. And brother, man, we were gonna go over every play and what was I thinking and da da da. And back then I played defense, offense. I punted, I kicked. Man, son of a gun. I played basketball because I love basketball. The other reason was when I first took up basketball, I'm like, finally he has something he cannot critique. Finally, he has something. Little did I know, one year in junior high or high school, he broke his arm, so he couldn't play football. So the whole year they made him play basketball. And and I'm like, are you kidding me? Now I'm gonna get the critique in basketball. I was just like, come on, man, I can't get away. So the idea of a lot of fans going, oh, he was so famous and yes, he was. But I think well, let me just say he was a legend. I mean, but we lived in the country, right? I mean, my high school was huge, but it also probably covered thousands of acres because we were so far out of town. I mean, we had huge graduating classes. So and we weren't always just hanging around downtown. So I'm trying to say we weren't exposed. Now, when we went to the matches and we worked, the droves of people, and if they saw him in the crowd and all the yelling, we knew he was so well known. But in our life, our friends didn't treat us any different. No one treated us any different because we were from that town, right? So if people saw him, they said, hey, that's Cowboy. But they wouldn't go, Cowboy, can I have an autograph? Probably because he'd say, hey, listen, no, this is my hometown. Shut up. Who knows?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the childhood and the expectations, and we loved it. I mean, the crazy thing about my life is I've always loved pro wrestling, and my father just so happened to be my favorite wrestler. And I sat back many times going, why? It's just he was the perfect. I mean, people just believed in him. When he punched people, I mean, his punches, his kicks, the chairs, if he was down getting beat, he was kind of like Mr. America,
Yeah.
And his territory, man. The people came to see him. I mean, and his athlete. And then when you get older and you get smarter and understand everything, and then you will look back at the matches and the booking. It's just he's one of the greatest wrestling minds in the business, and no one has to take my word for it. I remember Vince McMahon telling me, "Your dad is probably the best booker ever." Dusty Rhodes wouldn't say that, because Dusty Rhodes would say he's number one, but my dad was probably number two. Because I had many talks with Dusty, right? I helped train some of his students when he had Deep South Wrestling, and I wrestled with Dusty a bunch of times on his wrestling cards. So, but if you go around to so many of the people, Jerry Jarrett and Mike Graham, remembering how his dad talked about him, Gagne. Greg Gagne talking about how his dad, Vern Gagne, would talk about my dad. The Von Erichs about how their dad held esteem to him. And then you go around and, well, hell, you just go around. I mean, I was trained by a guy named Jody Hamilton, was the Masked Assassin. Masked Assassin wrestled in so many territories, it's not even funny, but he goes, there's only one booker. There's only one booker that everyone wanted to work for. And everyone knew how intense. And the one thing that people say about my dad, and I guess they say this about me too, is they go, the one thing about Mr. Watts is where you stand. Good or bad, where you stand. And that comes from him just being so intense all the time. So that was my childhood. That was what I was doing growing up. And it was an intense time. And it was a great time. But then I end up at college, which gave me my first, other than some of the wrestling camps that I went to some intensified wrestling camps. And so some of the intensified wrestling camps I went to, like Oklahoma State's intensified wrestling camp was about a month long. So that would be about as long as I had away from my house and away from my parents. And you're not thinking fun. You're thinking about, how do I make it to these camps, because they're so horrible. So when I went to college, it was truly the first time I got some distance and got to, kind of I was always myself, but kind of not look over my shoulder. What does someone want? What does someone not want? Now, I found out pretty quick how famous my dad was in other states, because when you got guys you're playing with, and then they start talking about Cowboy Bill Watts or whatever from all these different states, all the way from Florida to Connecticut to all this other stuff, you're like, yeah, he's real well known. But even when I got on that football team, people would tell me about how much they loved my father, but I didn't have anyone going, oh, okay, so your dad's famous, so you think didn't have it, because on the team I was at, we were all there to win a national championship if possible. So we had that in common, right? And so then I'm at Louisville, and it was a crazy experience at Louisville. I got to be around some incredible athletes. When I first went up there, I wasn't intending to go to Louisville. When I was about a junior, I really, really, really wanted. I was really thinking about going to Harvard or Yale or Cornell or Brown. Those were like probably my top 4 colleges that I wanted to go to. And some people would probably going, Brown's a college, yes. Cornell's a college, yes. Harvard, yes. Yale, yes. Only thing that kind of turned me off a little bit about the colleges is when talking about going there, they were so intense on academics. They said, hey, listen, we don't do spring football. We just do fall football. I go, I don't understand. They go, no, we want you to study. And then in the fall, if you got like a killer exam and you need to, then you can take out that week. I'm like, what? Like, how can I ever be competitive enough? Because I wanted to go to Harvard or Yale, but I still wanted to win the Heisman Trophy. And I still wanted to win a national championship, which wasn't going to happen at Harvard and Yale and those. But I still wanted to win, right? And so that's when I started pulling back and going, okay, where's the next best place I could go that has killer education and killer athletics? So it was Stanford. So I went to a football camp at Stanford, and it was amazing how this happens. Stanford was the only camp in the nation that I know of that would do 2 days, full pads, full contact. So, because most people don't want to send their kids out for that because they don't want to hurt at a camp. So I went out there, and amazingly, the same time I was out there, one of my favorite quarterbacks would show up, John Elway. And so I actually got 3 practices. I got to practice with the team twice, and then I got to throw John Elway every day.
Nice.
Because his dad was Jack Elway, and Jack Elway was the head coach for Stanford. So realistically, I was like, okay, this is what I want, you know? And then right before the end of my senior year, he called up and he said, son, I just got to be honest with you. I'm not going to be at Stanford next year. I'm taking a shot in the USFL, and I got a job with the Frankfurt Galaxy football team, and so I won't be here. And you know, for a part of me, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, I should go. Well, then I'm pulling back. I'm like, gosh, I've already told all these guys no. All these guys got so many recruits. Well, there were still people banging at my door, but one never really recruited me because I was so highly recruited. I guess they just didn't come after me. And I come home one day because I was talking to some colleges going, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. And there was a guy named Howard Schnellenberger. And if people don't know who Howard Schnellenberger is and they like college football, then they just don't know the history of football, because it goes back beyond college football. Howard Schnellenberger is the quarterback whisperer. He is one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's the only reason that University of Miami has football or any other athletics now, and I'll tell you why. He coached Johnny Unitas at the Indianapolis Colts. He wouldn't pull Johnny Unitas one game, and they got mad at him. The owners got mad at him and said, if we say pull him, he goes, I never pull a quarterback if they're having a tough time. How are they going to learn to kick out of a tough time? So then he ends up getting fired from the Colts after a few seasons, and then he goes and becomes the assistant head coach, which back then, I mean, that's almost unheard of. You know, head coaches didn't want to share head coaching, but there's a guy named Don Shula. and so Coach Schnellenberger was the assistant head coach, and he was part of the 1972 undefeated Miami Dolphins. Okay. Matter of fact, what was crazy is in '72, I was 5 years old, and I already loved football, and I was at a athlete's foot place, and I said, Mom, I want to sign for a raffle. And so I remember asking and say, hey, how is there any age limit? They go, no, ma'am. It's all across the nation, no age limit. So I signed it, put in the card. Sure enough, a few weeks later, get a call, and I had won a autographed signed 1972 Miami Dolphins football.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I still have it. Well, the crazy thing about it is how the life can circle. The assistant head coach of the '72 Miami Dolphins became my coach in college because it's Howard Schnellenberger, right? And which he just passed away this year, man. What a great guy. But the other thing is, when he sat in my living room, you know, we talked a lot, and he said, Eric, you can go anywhere. You can go anywhere that you want. He goes, I'm going to tell you right now. He goes, do you want to go walk in tradition, or do you want to start one? And see, I was never that dude that followed anything or anybody. I would come up with the craziest trends, you know, in high school. And then before you know it, people would be doing it. My mom's like, you know, son, you're so confident, because that's the most ridiculous look I've ever seen. I said, Mom, I'm rocking it. And she's like, I know. But what I'm scared of, other parents are going to have to see their kids wear what you're wearing. Yeah. So I was trying to set a trend, right, all the time. Yeah. So I said, Coach, can I ask you something? Where are you at? And then I said, I know where you were at a few years ago, because his last 3 quarterbacks was Kozar, Kelly, and Testaverde. When he went to University of Miami called him in for an interview. And because he was with the USFL, and the USFL folded, and they knew that he was going to find a college to go to or go to the pros. So they came to him and said, hey, we got an offer. He goes, what's the offer? He goes, we're the University of Miami. We're a private school. We want to do sports because we think it'd be cool, but we are like an Ivy League type school. And a lot of people don't know that. It's a very small, actually private school. And he goes, so we're all about academics, and we're losing in sports, so we don't want to keep doing it. So if you'll come coach our team, And in 5 years, if you can get us to one bowl game, we'll keep all athletics. If you don't get us to a bowl game in 5 years, we're going to kill all athletics at the University of Miami. Coach Schnellberg goes, I'm a man that starts traditions. All right. I'm a trendsetter, right? 3 years after he took on the University of Miami, they won a national championship. So Miami would not even had athletics had it not been for him, right? So that's the legend. So I went up to be mentored by Howard Schnellenberger, and he was a wrestling, he was a football like genius, complete genius. So get up there, and it was all competition all the time. I remember we had 3-a-days leading up to football season, my first year. And I went to look at the roster, and there was 13 quarterbacks.
13.
Yeah. I was like, because I was ready for there to be 5. I was ready to be 5. I mean, I got you 6 maybe. You need some scout. No, 13 quarterbacks. And the crazy thing about it is, every year you start off alphabetically. They don't put first string, second string, third string when they're starting the year to say the competition's open. Now, listen, even if they say the competition's open, they got a good idea already who's going to win it. But that's it. So I went up there. So me being Watts, it was demoralized. I'm like, oh my God, I'm 13th. So I was 13th string started my first day. But it quickly changed. And because the whole plan was Howard Schnellenberger's playbook. Maybe on the next interview, if I find one of them, I'll show it. It's like an encyclopedia. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of plays, defenses, everything, routes, all this. And he told me that. He brought the playbook to my house. He goes, son, we're going to redshirt you your first year, and then you'll have 4 years after to compete. But I do this with all my quarterbacks because the playbook is so thick. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So when I went with that intention. And then before you know it, about 7 days, 6 days into this 3 days, which was brutal. I mean, you'd hear, they took us off campus, right? And then they would take your keys away from you, and so that you couldn't run off.
Oh man!
You would hear kids crying and doors closing, and then you hear cars starting, and then sometimes you hear a car like screech, and then someone's picking someone up. Well, there was a few guys my first year that gave a set but kept a set of keys, and they didn't know it. Then there's people crying, mom, dad, friends, pick us up. They wanted out of there. It was some of the most brutal training I've ever seen in my life. I remember coming back from my first practice. I'm like, gosh, dang, man, that had to be like 3-hour practice. Like three of these bad boys is 9 hours. There's only so much sunlight, right? And then when I first came around, I came around because you go straight to eat, sweaty, the whole thing. You don't give a shit. You got to eat, man. And I saw these huge trash cans full of ice. I go, what in the world is that? They go, no, after you eat, if you're smart, you jump in the ice for 30 minutes. I go, after you eat, you got like 1 hour most before the next practice. And the guys go, so what are you going to do? Go to sleep? I'm like, hell no, I don't, I just don't know. So the first time I went and laid down. But that third practice, I hurt so bad. And the next morning, I hurt so bad. I said, I don't care. So I learned to jump in those buckets and sit in those buckets for 30 minutes. And that was the only way to make it through there. And not everyone used them. They probably only had 20. They probably had 160 guys, But I was in there. That's how brutal the practices were. So things are happening. And all of a sudden, I'm getting, Coach Schellenberg's talking to me and saying, hey, I may have to revisit this situation, man. You're looking so good that you're really the second string quarterback. You're not going to start because our starter, just knows the playbook. He's been with us, but he blew his knee out last year. And if he goes down, depending on where we are in the season, I may put you in. I go, but hold on. Because when I went to school, if you played just one down at a game, you lost that whole season. So, now I'm kind of like, well, but coach, hold on. What if we get in the ninth game and he goes down and he goes, no, I won't put you in. I'm like, but we were talking about it, but that wasn't the whole idea. But then when he talked to me, I said, let's do it. And I said, I'll do whatever you want, man. And so when I was there, I had a car. It was a used car. I loved it. My dad would always get on to me. I got my brother's car, when I turned 16. I got my older brother's car and loved it. Washed it all the time, loved it. And then I remember one year my dad walked into this place to buy a car. He saw this Trans Am. He's like, Eric, that's the coolest Trans Am ever. Well, I had a Trans Am. Okay. I said, Dad, it's a beautiful Trans Am. I said, but I don't need a car. I got one. Your brother drove that for 3 years before you got it. You've been driving it for 2 years now, or a year now, 2 years now. Let's get into it. I said, no, I don't want to. Well, my mom was there. He's like, I don't understand what you're saying. He goes, I want to get you that car. I go, I don't need that car. And my mom's like, Bill, have you not learned? He's all business. He's thinking, why? He goes, but I make enough money, I can buy him as many cars as I want. He goes, that's not what he's thinking. Like, why does he need more of anything that he doesn't need? He's got enough, right? And he goes, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you don't let me buy you this car, I'll never buy you a car again. And I looked at, because I was gonna say, I don't need you to buy me a car. I'll be fine. And my mom's like, do it. So I did it. And so I drive it home, and I'm following them. We live probably 30 miles away from the place. And my dad slammed the door and got out. He goes, you son of a, he goes, you reverse psychology me. You made me buy that car. So I didn't make you buy anything. My mom got out laughing. She goes, he is so frustrated because he just thought it was the coolest thing, and you weren't having it now, and now you're driving it. And it was hilarious. So again, it was a beautiful car. Love the car. Matter of fact, one of the coolest things that happened to me is Ricky and Robert, the Rock and Roll Express, loved the car. And so, it was time for a new photo shoot with a new poster. And Ricky and Robert were like, hey, we want to take a picture with Eric's car. And so they took a picture by my car, and then Ricky and Robert, a Rock and Roll Express, and we sold those posters. And so there was a white Trans Am with like blue stripes, and we actually took louvers and painted louvers white, which you think wouldn't look good, but it really looked cool, especially back then. And it was the cat's meow. So I'm there, and it's a few years old now, and I'm happy with the car. And as happens in sports, someone from somewhere offered me incredible money for my Trans Am and cut the rate on a really nice car to almost nothing. So I'd have to pay barely anything for a brand new car. Well, I didn't know that. It was the offer was through my dad when my dad was visiting, and my dad pulls up at a practice in a red 944 Porsche. And after practice, he said, hey, Dad, you don't really fit in that car. And I was like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, no, just want to show you your new car. I go, what are you talking about? He's like, well, this deal, man, is unbelievable. You're going to pay the difference, but it's an incredible deal. You got to take advantage of the deal. And I go, Dad, I don't need another car. I got a car. I'm happy with it. Well, I walked off, and I said, and then I turned around and said, besides, Dad, if I was going to get a 944, it damn sure wouldn't be without a turbo. Not knowing who I was talking to. Next day comes up, he's driving a 944 turbo. And Louisville red with a Louisville license plate up front. And so I'm like, okay, man, this is too cool. Let's do it. Well, little did I know, the first day, Howard Schnellenberger saw my dad pull up in it and asked him what he was doing. My dad said, I'm going to get him a car. And Schnellenberger goes, no, you're not. He goes, most of my kids, if not all my kids, come from really tough backgrounds. And I want all my kids hungry. I don't want anyone on my team that's not hungry. He goes, are you saying my kid's not hungry? He goes, no, he's the most hungry. But he goes, perception is reality. So he can get away with that older Trans Am over there, even though it's the nicest car that these kids have, but it's not crazy nice. If he ends up with a brand new Porsche, well, I mean, what are we going to do? My dad goes, and I could tell my dad was pissed because no one told Cowboy Bill Lance what to do, right? So now that, then I say I wouldn't drive anything unless it was a turbo. So I don't know all the heat. And so my dad threw me the keys. I drove it around. Of course, you can't have a car. I mean, you can't be driving your car there. So I took the keys, gave them to the coaches and said, hey, and they're like, nice new car. And the next day I came, and I was from 2 back to 13. this,
Oh,
this time not alphabetically, just they put me as 13. And I'm like, are you kidding me, right? So that's kind of how that went for 2 years. But it's perspective on life. It's how you look at things. Like if people want to be this way and people want to be all political and all crazy crap going on in their head, and they're going to use that against the person, or if they think if someone has uh, bad shoes, that they're if people have horrible shoes, can they run fast? If people have horrible shoes, are they from a bad family? I mean, don't just look at the package or the marketing around it and make a decision, right? You drive a nice car doesn't make you a good person. You drive a bad car doesn't make you a bad person. But I'd been there, and my mom had trained me at such a high level of caring about others, and that life is more what you can do for others than yourself, and that we're all humans on this earth. We all got an expiration date. Therefore, we should cherish the time we have with other people, because we're all going to be we're all going to pass away. So really, what's the reason? And the greatest reason is if you can help out a whole bunch of other people in this world, no matter what is wrong or not wrong in their lives. Isn't the greatest thing being able to maybe lift someone up or help someone out, or give them a word of encouragement, or it's like I'm lucky enough sometimes, in Atlanta, it's a pretty progressive place where new studies come out on new processes all the time, and I've had people beat up and hurt, and all of a sudden you say, hey, have you ever thought about like a stem cell injection? Or did you hear that they've got a new medication that helps you with this or that? Or, hey, this doctor just came with a laser process. You used to have to open your chest up, and now they can do a laparoscopic surgery on this. And they're like, no. And then you can help out and lead them the right ways. That's awesome. So that's kind of the way I was raised, and that's the way I feel to this day. But so when it's happening to me, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, I'm at that point, I'm not even mad about it. I'm sad that people are acting that way. And again, but he's a great coach. I believe him. It's just I had my father and I had Howard Schnellenberger, and they were both two bulls in a china shop. And so they did this. Now, I will say this: why my dad ever thought that he needed to be anywhere to not like what someone says, that's a different story. That's a different story. Because to me, I'm like, why are you even saying anything? This is my career. Why are you
yeah.
even putting your 2 cents in? However, he's my father, and I've been around him, so I said, that's just my dad. But at the same time, I'm trying to get around with Schnellberger. So before my third year happened, I had been dating a girl from high school, and she was also a highly educated, very good at academics. I think she was valedictorian of the high school. Because I transferred out of my high school 2 years left and went to Tulsa Metro Christian Academy. We stayed dating and then college. So she wanted to find a college up near Louisville, but that was awesome at academics. She wanted to be a doctor, and so she went to Purdue. Purdue is a phenomenal school. Matter of fact, she's a fantastic doctor and has done very well for herself. And but at some of this time, I would travel up when I could and watch Purdue play, and maybe once or twice. I'm like, gosh, that is an incredible team. Like they're the biggest guys, huge linemen, huge defensive linemen, huge receivers, all this athletic talent, but their offense just stunk. Their playbook stunk. I was like, how can a team with this much talent be so bad?
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, I said, you know what? With all I know and all I've learned at Louisville, if I transferred to Purdue, I'll walk on, I'll pay. I don't care. If I transferred, I'd have to stay out one season. But that still means I have 2 years left. And so I said, this is it. This is what I need to do. I'm going to go to Purdue. I'm going to play. I'll transfer 1 year. I'll learn. I'll be showing them some of what I know. They'll be showing me. We'll get a playbook together. My last 2 years, we'll crush it. So I called my dad. Said, Dad, I'm making a choice, and I'm going to go to Purdue. Well, why would you do that? I said, because I'm not going to deal with you guys hitting heads and stuff like that. I want to play football. I mean, that's what I came for. And he goes, I'm going to talk to Schnellenberger. So him and Schnellenberger get together. I don't know. Well, I do know, but we got worked a little bit. And so him and Schellenberger went in. They had a kumbaya. My dad came out and said, they got religious. And this is where everyone thinks, my calling, is to be here. And they both believe, God wants me to be in Louisville. And I, sometimes when someone trumps me with the big dog, with big God, I go, okay, well, I mean, listen, I don't know. I mean, if that's what you guys think, I'm good. I'm not going to question that. And so I said, all right, I'll give it a chance, man. But I just want everything off me. I don't want, I don't want you guys need to stop talking and let me just be me and let me rock on. And so, sure enough, that summer, I'm getting all the number one starts, all the plays. My roommate, which was my best friend, Browning Nagel, he was backing me up, and I mean, we're right there. And the first day that I stepped on campus, I went back to the bottom of the depth chart, because if you go to one day of school, it counts as a whole year, all the way back down. So
Hey.
I was like, okay, this is just too much. But now I can't leave. And if I left the next year, I'd have to burn a year and only have 1 year. So now I have nowhere to go. Now it's not a choice. Now I have to be here. And then so things got more brutal, Then the coach told me, hey, Browning's going to start, So I don't want my 1 and 2, or my 1, 2, and 3, or my 1 and 4. I don't want them rooming together. This is a competition at all times. Yes, we're a team, but you guys need to stay in competition. So then I go to Browning and say, hey, I got to move rooms. And he didn't believe me. I'm like, go ask Coach Schnellenberger. So then took my best friend in college, and he didn't want to talk to me. And again, I'm like, I don't have time to explain to simple people what's going on. This is an easy one to figure out. I had 2 high school classmates that were on the team that transferred in the year before. And so I roomed with one of my roommates, and then he's like, oh, no, you're always going to do that. I go, no, I wasn't. This is actually what happened. So Browning got the start for the next 2 years. And now, just so you know, the guy that started that I was going to back up the 1 year was Jay Gruden, which just so happens to be the old Washington Redskins head coach and all this other stuff. So there was some major talent on the team. Browning Nagel, he gets his playing time, and he's having a rocky year. And I'd come in occasionally in the games and stuff like this, and he was having a rocky year. So at the Fiesta Bowl, we're sitting in Tempe, Arizona. We're getting ready to play Alabama, and coach is like, well, I haven't made my decision on who's starting in the Fiesta Bowl yet. And I'm sitting there going, oh, geez. First of all, Browning started every game. Well, you just give it to Browning, right? But he'd been playing a little bit spotty. He had some awesome games, and then he had some bad games, and he had some awesome games. And Schellenberger was just expecting more. Okay. But let's not get here and change quarterback. So he thought about it. He had a meeting, and it was me, Jeff Brom, Browning Nagel, and he goes, I'm gonna start Browning. And I'm like, yeah, that's the right thing to do. And like I said, Browning had a questionable year, but brother, man, he came out in that first half and set a Fiesta Bowl record. He threw for over 300 yards in the first half. I came in the second half. We beat Alabama 34-7. We drummed them. The next year they won the national championship. And then at the Fiesta Bowl, that's back then. That's the top 1, 2, or 3 bowl. The national championship is almost always taken out of the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, or Fiesta Bowl. Almost always. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we're at the big dance, right? And we just drummed the piss out of them. So because of that, Browning gets picked first pick quarterback, New York Jets in the second round. So boom, immediately multi-millionaire, right? So even though I can say that, hey, this is what happened, that's what happened, I was still around some awesome talent, right? So maybe that's what that maybe because I could be honest too and go, hey, these are some great guys and there's some great talent. So I'm not just taking it personal. I mean, it'd be worse if I was on a team where the quarterback couldn't tie his shoelaces and I was getting messed over. No, we were an incredible team at all positions, incredible team. So what killed me the next year was here's my fifth year there, which they call a redshirt senior. I've been playing. I've been doing everything. Meaning going to practices, not missing anything. Scholastic awards. I was the quarterback. My senior year, I was picked nationally by the NCAA. I was academic All-American, and they only pick one at every position. I was the quarterback academic All-American. Got the trophy, got the whole thing. So I pressed on. I was always pressing on school. I was showing up. I always worked as hard as I could work. And that year starts, and he goes, Eric, I'm gonna start Jeff this year. And matter of fact, you're not even traveling. I haven't missed any games. I'm traveling. I went to Tokyo against Syracuse, all this other stuff, and now we're gonna just go ahead and stick the dagger deeper on me. And I'm like, what does anyone have to gain? So I remember I'm at my place with my fiance. We're sitting there watching the game. They play Tennessee, and we had lost like 7 or 8, 9 people to the draft the year before. Like we lost so many great players, and coach didn't go out to junior colleges to fill those out because he didn't believe in junior colleges. And we had so many holes in the offensive line that whoever's playing quarterback was going to get killed. And Jeff, during that game, gets his leg broken in half. And I don't know, it was halftime. I don't know if it was when. I had a call from Coach Schnellenberger. Son, I need you. I go, use one of the other 3 quarterbacks. He goes, no, I'm going to get through this game. When we get home, you got to start for me the rest of the year because no quarterback's going to be able to take what's going to happen. And you should have been starting. And so you're going to start. Now, right there would have been my mic drop time if I gone, go fly a kite.
Yeah.
But also the thing that means a lot to me is the University of Louisville paid everything for me. I was on full scholarship. I had a degree. I'm in the master's school. I'm still achieving one of my goals, and that is to have a degree. And it looks as though now I'm going to have a master's degree, and I'm going to come out of college debt-free. So yes, football is important. Yes, I had goals, but I don't believe I lost to my goals. I believe things got in the way of my goals, and I'm not going to stay in. I'm not going to sit there and get depressed about it. So come back, and I said, all right, coach. I mean, you didn't let me hit any like starter plays and all this other stuff. So we're gonna have to play some real catch up. And it just so happened that the next game after Tennessee, my first start, not my first playing time, but my first start as a Louisville quarterback, was in the Horseshoe with 110,000 people against Ohio State on ESPN.
No way.
Yeah, ESPN. So if you ever Google it, you can put Eric Watts, Ohio State, and then you can check some stuff out. And so it was a nail biter to the end. We ended up losing the game. Ohio State was highly ranked. But it was right at the very end. Time ran out. I threw a flag pattern. We were down by 8, but we were coming back. And my receiver didn't tell me that he fractured his foot on the play before. So Schnellenberger called a play for him, which he was our most trustworthy receiver, let's say that. And man, he went and he cut, and as soon as he cut, I'm like, oh, this is easy. And I just lofted the ball up, and I lofted. I go, what's he doing? What's he doing? And it looked like he was running hard, and that ball dropped, just a yard in front of him. I didn't know what to say. I'm like, I knew it was a touchdown. If that touchdown happens, all we got to do is score 2 points. We're going to overtime. ESPN, Ohio State. Matter of fact, we knocked out Graham, their starting quarterback, about the second quarter. And guess who was the backup quarter to him? Kirk Herbstreit. That's when so that's how Kirk Herbstreit got his playing time at Ohio State. He became, the quarterback there. So it dropped and then it came back. He goes, Erik, but I couldn't fault the kid. He goes, no, it was my call. I just couldn't. I couldn't break out of it. And sometimes I still wake up to this day thinking that he's going to catch the ball. I still have that dream every once in a while, believe it or not. And I'll tell you what. One of the most vicious hits on a quarterback was against me on that one too. I had a strong. I had a corner blitz. It was coming. I knew it was coming. I didn't care it was coming because I had a back that was supposed to pop it. I was backing up to throw it left. Brother, man, no one touched him. Broke 3 ribs, displaced my jaw, and dislocated my finger on this hand. So I'm laying down there, and I'm like, God, it hurt. And they come with smelling salts and all this other stuff. And I said, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. Pop my finger back in. Well, I was a little disoriented because they called a timeout. I had to go out. They called it an injury timeout. I had to go out. So I had to go out one. I was still dinged up. I came off the sidelines. And I was like, forget those guys. I went to headbutt someone. Well, I didn't have my helmet on. Ding myself in the head. I'm like, oh my God, almost knocked myself out. And then I said, just do it, guys. I'll put like 6, 7 smelling salts and wrap my wrists. And so they put smelling salts all around both wrists so that in the game I could just hit them and smell that ammonia to stay awake and keep playing. But if you ever get to see that, check out that hit because I'm telling you, this guy knocked me in the next week. And he came up to me and goes, I think I broke my neck hitting you. Because I at the time I was the second biggest quarterback. There was a guy in Lexington he was actually 302 pounds. But I was 257, 6'6". I think he was like 303, but he's like 6'3". And so I was a big quarterback back then. But that's kind of, the season went that way. I think I threw 302 yards, three touchdowns in that Ohio State game. And so it was kind of, it was good to play. So I stuck around, I played, and basically what happened is it is kind of funny too, because the Florida State, we were playing Florida State, and my girlfriend or my fiance at the time, she was a track scholarship. So she's on track scholarship, on football scholarship. So she sucks running because I ran her down and got her. So she would go one of the biggest track meets. It was during the summer, and it was at Florida State. And so I'd go down to watch my girl Florida State. Well, then I would, like, in between, the 3 events you do, I'd sneak off on campus to the basketball because I love basketball, play pickup basketball. Well, who all's out there? The big old linemen, defensive linemen, they're sitting there for summer school playing ball. So I'm playing ball with all these guys. So, man, when I'm starting against them, they're jawing me, and I'm like, I packed your shot, shut up, we're just – and when I say they beat me up so bad, I had the ribs, broken ribs. They dislocated this finger and another finger. The jaw is out. I had to wear for 4 or 5 games after that. I had to wear a brace in my mouth, so at night they would hope it would pop back underneath because my jaw was out, and then I'd have to wear that and call signals through like this the whole time. Blue 29, blue 29, and then one night it popped back in. My jaw was fine, thank God. I didn't have to have the surgery. They beat me to death, and so it was about third quarter. This first quarter they were scared. I think we went into the halftime at 10-7 or something. They were scared, right? And but they woke up and beat the shit out of us. So don't, I'm not trying to misrepresent. They got us, but they're just unloading on me and unloading on me and unloading. It was hilarious. Florida State, when they tackled you, their technique was the first guy would grab you, and even if he could put you down, he wouldn't. So the next guy comes and grabs the forearms of the first guy, and they bridge like this. And then the next guy grabs the forearms and bridges. So if they get like 3 guys on you, they're like, they had me totally arched, and I couldn't breathe. And then they fall on you every time. 2, 3 guys, 2, 3 guys. So it's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's getting worse, and it's hilarious. They picked me up afterwards. So about the third quarter, they go. They said, because they kept on going, get out of here, go to the sideline. You'll never play again. Your line, we're running through your line like water. You are a dead duck. Watts, get to the sideline, bro. Just go. And it wasn't jaw talking at this time. They were just lighting me up, but they would help me up. Come on, man. Come on, dude. You can't keep on taking these hits. About the third quarter, about the end of the third quarter, they go, we're not picking you up. They go, the one guy goes, I can't move my neck. I've hit you so many times. The other guy goes, shit, my shoulders are so sore from hitting him. And they're like, after the game, they go, we're going to take a week of ice just to go. We've never hurt so bad. And these are big, like 300 pounders that go, you are a heavy 255, brother. so I mean, there were some great moments. There were some cool moments. And so at the very end, man, the banquet, Howard Schnellenberger got up, and the banquet's on TV, and he said, to bring me up for my letter and to talk to me. I got some award. I can't remember what it was. And he said, I got to say this to your face on national TV. He goes, I treated you wrong, and for all the wrong reasons. And even when I thought that, I could break you, you didn't break. And then you came and lasted the whole season after I kept you home. The first, I think 2 games, right? He goes, and you came, and when I asked you, you showed up, and you suited up, and you played every down, the one down, like you were a true warrior for me. And he goes, I have never mistreated an athlete, and I've never seen an athlete this mistreated, and I just want to say I'm sorry, and I'll never do it again to anybody else if that means anything to you. Just shook his hand, hugged him, because I did love him, I did. He was a great coach, incredible coach. And that was it. And then I got with my agents, and I had opportunity. Cincinnati wanted me, Tampa wanted me. It looked like I was going to go to Tampa to back up to Berg. I wasn't going with only 9 games to my resume. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go the first few rounds. I don't have enough film. I don't have enough anything. And but they said, hey, probably we'll be picking you up in the free agent rounds, 4th, 5th round, and do it. At that point, I was so sick of politics. I couldn't see it right now. I mean, like my head was swimming. I was so pissed. And so I'm thinking to myself, nah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start interviewing. I'm going to pull myself from the draft. I'm going to come back and finish, because I had 3 classes left to finish my master's. And I called up my dad and said, hey, Dad, I graduated 1.5 years ago. I'm working on my master's. I made a promise, but now I got my degree. I've always wanted to know what it's like to be in the ring. Do you know someone in Atlanta that could get me in the ring? And I said, just to train. That's all I want to do. I don't want to train. I just want to come down there and train, just to see what it's like, and come back up and finish my master's. And I said, I'm done with football. I'm just done. And the coolest call was from Jimmy Johnson, Dallas Cowboys. He said, he called me. He said, hey, Erik, we want you in Dallas, because this is what I want you to do. Go to the USFL for a year, because I got Aikman, Bono, I believe it was Aikman, Bono, and Andre Ware, the Heisman Trophy winner from Houston Cougars. He goes, I got to have you as a backup. I have never seen a quarterback with that much talent and that much size. He goes, literally, if something happened to Troy Aikman and the second string, I could play you for the rest of the year. No, I wouldn't even have to get another quarterback, because I don't think you can get hurt. I said, no, sir, I can get hurt. He goes, well, give me a year to get a position for you here, but go to USFL. I said, sir, I'm not going to USFL. And he goes, man, I'd really like to have you on the team. And I said, I was a huge Cowboy fan, and I was loving life. I'm not there. I remember the USA Today came out, and Sports Illustrated. They put Erik Watts has decided to go to pro wrestle. Well, I hadn't decided to go to pro wrestle. I didn't say I was going to go to pro wrestle. I said I want to get in the ring. So I went down to the school, is Jody Hamilton's school. A lot of people get it confused because they think that that was the power plant. It wasn't the power plant of WCW, which Jody Hamilton's school became the WCW power plant school, like at the facility. I go to work out with Jody, and he helped me with open arms. And all he said was, "If you're gonna come work out, order boots. You can work out in shorts, shirt, bandana. I don't care, but I want like pro wrestling boots in my rings. I don't want to tear up the canvases or anything like that." And he goes, and listen, I'm going to treat you the old school way, and we are going to push you as hard as we can push you, because I understand that you may just want to come in the ring and see what it's like to do something you've watched your whole life, but we don't train half-ass. And so I'll just leave you with that. So that's how my college degree ended. And now I'm being told to get boots because I'm just going to go down to Atlanta for about 3 weeks. I'm going to knock out what I've always wanted to do, just to feel what it's like to be in the ring, understand what goes on in the ring. And then I'm going to head back to Louisville. I already got offers from like Georgia Pacific and some other people to work if I wanted to. But I just was going down to see how it felt to be in the ring, something I'd watched and wanted to do my whole life, but by keeping my goals and my dreams and what I told with my mother and father and my commitment, I didn't. But my other goal was to finish my master's too. So that's where I was at in my life right after college. And my fiance, she had another year left. Or she had another semester left. So she was going to finish her semester. I was going to finish my master's, and then I was going to Louisville anyway. I was more than likely going to Atlanta because of certain job opportunities I had with Fortune 500 companies there. And so that's how I thought it was going to go. In your next segment with me, I believe it's going to be next Tuesday. We'll pick it from there because anyone that knows, that's not how it turned out.
Yeah, part two. Actually, I should have put the photo up, in here before we started. But now that we're talking about it, we can just say it. Part two next Tuesday. We're going to be talking about the WCW and WWF days.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, it leads a little teaser, like I said, a little teaser. Hey, maybe you might have a chance to go check out that Ohio State football game.
I definitely want to check that out, Eric, because it's amazing that you have a memory like that with Ohio. I was real interested in it because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
So I mean, to hear that, that's amazing stuff.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Now, here's an interesting question that I thought of, while listening to your story.
Yeah.
I remember you said early on when we started the interview that, your mom was okay with having all of you around the business, but she didn't want you guys in the ring.
Right.
Now, just hypothetically, say if your mom would have been okay with, you and the rest of the, family getting in the ring, would you have went that route instead of going the whole football route? Do you think life would have been different?
No, well, this is what I know. Joel had gone to college at Oklahoma, right? Now he did not graduate Oklahoma because he got frustrated with college. Joel's one of the smartest guys anyone will ever meet. He graded out genius on not on one occasion, two occasions. He was at Oklahoma. He should have been at Harvard or Yale. And he decided to go to my dad's alma mater, Oklahoma, which just bored him to tears. And so my dad went up there one day and was like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're bored. You're just sitting around partying all the time because it's so boring to you." And he goes, "So what do you want to do?" So Joel kind of like, "Well, I want to get my degree because I want to be part of the business." Now Joel was never going to be a pro wrestler. I mean, he just wasn't. He just didn't have the body composition. He just didn't. He wasn't. Joel was awesome. He just wasn't an athlete, And so my dad's like, "Well, so what are you thinking?" He goes, "Man, I love cameras and I love this and that. I'd love to kind of look into TV shows and stuff like that. My dad's like, really? He goes like, what are you thinking? And Joel's like, well, like MTV, man, it's really hitting. And I was wanting to do like MTV videos with wrestlers in them and bring more music to the TV show and all that. My dad's like, that's very interesting. And he goes, how much do you think something like that would cost? And Joel's like, probably to get some of the right sounding boards and equipment back then. He said probably about $250,000. He goes, okay, well, guess what? You're going to go to the next electronic show, which I think was in New Orleans, like huge convention. And he goes, and you're going to buy that $250,000 worth of shit, and you're going to show me what we're going to do with the show, to jazz it up, And so, so Joel did that, and so as he was doing those things, he started refereeing, right? And so he did some refereeing, so he would start learning about what's going on in the matches and all this other stuff, right? So, but then he came color commentary and head producer and all this other stuff. So Joel was going that route anyway. The true heir apparent to my father, as far as looks and size, was my brother Micah. And Micah was being recruited, which you can't do legally, but there's letters from coaches. Once you become a senior, we see that we will probably be talking to you about your interest in this college. I'm like, God, who's getting recruiting letters in 8th grade and shit? I mean, that was ridiculous back in those days. But he was a freaking beast. He's a beast amateur wrestler. He's a beast football player. He was so big, so freaking big. He's just so strong. He hurt people all the time. It was just, he loved it. He just loved it. And, but he broke his neck when he was 13 or 14. In a motocross accident, because me and him, one of our big releases was I say motocross, we're not sure. Me and him would blow off steam with doing motocross at our house. We were on 46 acres. So in Oklahoma, we've got what we call a blood board most of the time. So blood boards were to find out who the toughest person was on the team. That was one way. And another way was to discipline people. Micah was known as like the Grim Reaper. You did not want to get with him. So I believe it was a 8-foot or 10-foot 2x4. And they put the 2x4, and then you get down in your stance at the end of it. Your fingers would be at the end, and when the coach said go, you ran head first, boom, and whoever spun off or got driven all the way back off the board lost. And Micah killed people at it. So Micah had a it was pretty awesome. I didn't see it. It was pretty awesome. He was crazy. He was crazy. He was just crazy. And so we had CR250s, and he'd be that guy. He'd pour actually like some nitrous in the gas and blow shit up. And so one day he was at the hauling butt, and he was always doing jumps and stuff. And they said he was like 3rd, 4th gear, and he jumped this thing, and something happened, and the bike just flew out from under him. And they said it must have been 100 feet or so. He landed on his back and just boom, slid, and they said he was all banged up. So they took him to the doctor. They said he's swollen. We're not going to do anything right now. He can move his neck, blah 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 blah. But we're going to do some CAT scans and MRIs or whatever it is. But let's get him, let's get him unstiff and all this other bullshit. So my dad's out of town, and people were scared to death of my dad. If he said don't do something, don't do it. So he said, hey, Mike is going to make every practice. And he's going to stand on the sideline every practice and watch every play, because that's what injured athletes do. It's, but he's not to do anything until I get back in town and we give him the right doctors. So Mike was doing it, and so he's sitting there, and he's got like, I don't know, some kind of like penny loafers on, some jeans and bullshit. And this kid just was pissing off the coach, just making him mad. And he couldn't take it. He said, Micah. Yeah, he goes, at the end of the practice, this guy doesn't, whatever. He goes, blood board. And Micah's looking at him like, are you kidding me? I can barely move my neck. But, you're young, right? And everyone looks at you like you're a legend already, right? And sure enough, the thing ends, and he goes, give Micah some shoulder pads and a helmet. and they put shoulder pads and a helmet on him, and he went down. So now, but he doesn't have cleats on. He's got like penny loafers, and he gets down. He's like, "Hey, the coach told me I'm going to have to wreck this kid." And he went, and right before he hit the guy, he pushed off even double hard. And when he did, because his foot slipped, he slipped and his head went down, and that kid hit him full helmet right back on this vertebrae. And so, like, if you feel the vertebrae at the top, the knot run right there, Micah's is severed in half.
Oh.
And the only thing is holding it. It just swims around his ligaments. And the problem is your head cone goes there. So I mean, we've been scared forever. A big car wreck or something like that, it could just crack your spinal cord. Well, they were wanting to fuse it or staple it, but they're too scared of if anything got botched at all, he'd be in a wheelchair. So the poor kid for years. I mean, he's had his nose cauterized 6-7 times. Blood comes. They say only you only have to cauterize the nose once. It's not true. He's dealt with bleeding noses and headaches and all that stuff. He's still pretty big as a house, but that ended his football career. He tried one other time about 4 years later, and he came to me my senior year, and he's like, "Eric," he goes, "all I want to do is play a game with you." And he goes, "That's all I ever wanted to do." I said, "Micah, no." And I mean, he was big, healthy. You couldn't tell he was ever hurt. And he went and talked to my dad. My dad said, "Well, you sure?" He goes, you told, we got to, Mike, I don't think so." And he goes, "I got to." And he came out for a practice, and he was killing people again. And it was about the third practice, and something happened. You could just tell, and he just dropped. And when he dropped, he was limp. He was paralyzed. And but it was just like for like a split second. And then he kind of got up groggy, and his nose is bleeding, and his memory is fucked up. He didn't know where he's at, and we got him off, and the doctor said that is the dumbest. I mean, who even let him out there? Who got his physical approved for him? So and so he never. He said, "Okay," and that kind of killed him, because this kid was wanting to wrestle, and so I can tell you this much: had Micah not broken his neck, God knows what he would have been. He might have been pro football player, pro whatever. But but Micah wasn't the guy that ever loved school, right? And so if anyone would have pushed against the grain, it would have been Micah. So I could see Micah as a junior in high school coming to my dad and saying, "Dad, during the summer I could go on the road and learn some stuff, or blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stick to this." And then his senior year, I could see him jumping into the ring as fast as possible, and then loving it so much that I could see Micah be one of those guys that would have blown off going to college to maybe go pro football. I could see that. So he would have been the person that would have pushed that envelope. With me, if my mom never made me, I don't know, because the way I was raised to try to succeed at what I'm doing. So when I got academic awards in high school, I still wanted to finish. I still want to finish my academic career, and I had football and basketball and wrestling, and I loved all those, and I watched all of them on TV. So I think I still would have gone. Now the difference is, okay, what would have happened? Let's go this route. What would have happened if, when that third year, which would have been, my redshirt year, and my dad and the coach get together and they say, "Hey, I think you should be here. It's meant for you to be here." And then I'm playing, and then all of a sudden the first day I get dropped off the chart. Oh, that might have changed my whole college career, because I might have gone, "Oh no, I'm done. Deuces. I don't have to have this game played with me." It would have. I'm a person of completion too, though. I like completing things. It would have bugged me, but as frustrating as things got, yeah, I might have said, "You know what? I can go to college and I can wrestle." I mean, who knows? So it might have changed things, but kind of. I don't know, man. Kind of the way I was raised is one thing in life. It's big to want things, right? But it's bigger to set a mark, whatever that mark is, and to achieve it.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking here, because I'm dissecting everything in my mind, that we talked about. And I came up with two more quick questions for you, about your career in
Yeah, go
football.
ahead.
Your last game, was that the Florida game or no?
No, no, I don't know. I can't remember who the last game was, Virginia or someone like that, but I don't know.
And when you went on that when you played that last game, do you remember what the feeling was like when you walked off the field? Like, were you feeling accomplished? Did you feel like, okay, I'm going to move on now and go to the NFL, or did you feel like, I'm just going to say goodbye to the game I love and move on to something else? Like, how did you feel when you knew your college career was just wrapped up?
Well, okay, so when I walked off the field my last game, um, I've never been I've never been delusional, right? So I already knew that I didn't have enough game film under me to um, push push a first round, second round. So I never thought that. When I walked off the field, and you know what, it might have been Virginia Tech or something like that because the kid went that kid went like the first or second round, and they won, but I had a big game, and I remember the kid coming up to me, and I wish I would remember his name. I'm trying to remember his name, and he said it was Virginia Tech, and the kid goes, the press box is full of pro scouts. And I said, yeah, they should be, man. You've had a hell of a career. He goes, I just want to thank you for taking my place in the draft. I go, what do you mean? He goes, the way you perform and the way you look, those scouts couldn't have been watching me. They had to be watching you. And it was a really cool feeling. Like, I'm like, brother, thank you so much. And what's crazier is about 5 years ago, I was doing some occasionally to give back, doing some coaching, right? And so the coach at Virginia Tech forever of the Hokies was oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of his name right now. It's horrible. This guy's legendary, legendary, and this one kid went to a camp at Virginia Tech, and for the quarterback camps and stuff like that, he would show highlights of quarterbacks that impressed him in his career as this Virginia Tech head coach. Beamer, Coach Beamer.
That's right. That's right.
Right. But
Frank Beamer.
yeah, it gives me chill bumps because I thought it was pretty cool. The kid said, and this guy right here, that's Erik Watts. He's wrestled at WCW, WWE, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if you guys know this, but he was one hell of a quarterback in college. And then he showed some highlights of me throwing against their defense. And that to me was like a huge, huge, huge compliment. But no, I mean, a part of me right at the end, when the last game happened, was the sigh of relief. Like, God, thank God this is over. Like these people around me don't understand that I it's so painful to watch people do crappy stuff to other people for no reason. No one won. There is no winning on this thing. And I'm so it gets tiring when someone can use you as a pawn in life just to f with someone else or mess with someone else, and then you're like, so I've been batted around like a volleyball, right? And for no other reason than the two people playing, right? And so I think what happened is I'm like, God, it's almost like I wanted to take the power out of the people's hand so that they couldn't use me to get back at people. As far as that's concerned, between my dad and Schellenberger and all this bullshit. I mean, I was like, God, I'm done. I don't have to hear about it. I don't have to talk about it. I will say though, me being me, I still had a dream to win the national championship. Well, I can't. That's over. I wanted to win the Heisman Trophy. Didn't. That's over. But I wanted to play in the NFL because I wanted to prove that I want to see what it's like to play in the NFL. I mean, that's all I ever watched was quarterbacks. I loved it. I wanted to go throw against the best. So I think with Schnellenberger I think Schnellenberger at that banquet saying what he said to me meant a lot. I was like, okay, well, so you know that you played a game with me, right? The only thing that kind of pissed me off was I got an agent and we're working, and so I felt good at that point. And I'm pretty sure by then I had made a decision. Well, you know what? The easiest way for me to show people that they were wrong about messing with me is if I went to the next level. And what if I start, making a name for myself? Then all the people are going to be asking them, well, why wasn't he played more in college or whatever? Like I could, I think maybe I could have rewritten what was wrong in college, maybe if I went pro. So I thought I'd give it a chance, and so it remotivated me. Remember when I told you about the Sports Illustrated article?
Yes, yes.
So there was a small. It wasn't a full article. It was just updates on college athletes. Well, I know that I didn't tell anyone I was going to go pro wrestle. I know my dad didn't. So who gave Sports Illustrated that information that I was going to pull myself from the draft, and that, or not that I was pulling myself from the draft, that Erik Watts is going to go pro wrestle? Because when you send that out to a whole bunch of coaches in the pros that are looking at me, and then they read in Sports Illustrated that I'm going pro, what does that do? So then I was getting calls, and that's when I was like, I was just getting furious. I'm like, and my agent's like, who told Sports Illustrated that? I go, I have no way. But I mean, they were talking so much with Cincinnati and Cleveland, it wouldn't have mattered about the article anyway. But it was just another shot, and I was like, I swear to God, I'm so sick of the politics in football. I mean, I was just done. I was like, I never knew, naive or what, in high school. Well, I never saw that in high school. Okay, I never saw it. I mean, the coaches that I was around just wanted to win. They wanted the best people playing, and that was it. I mean, that's why I started a quarterback and I started a defensive end. Most quarterbacks are, if they start both ways at the school, most time it's like a defensive back and maybe a quarterback. But most of the time, you're not playing both ways at huge schools, right? But I was playing quarterback, defensive end. I punt, I kicked, because the coaches I was around, they just wanted to win. And so I was around that my whole life. Like, hey, let's put the best in. I don't care who it is. Let's put the best in. So for me to have games played, but college is different, right? If you've got some killers, think about it. Jay Gruden. Well, the kid. Okay, so the kid after he mended his leg, Jeff Brom, he came back for another year or 2 years, and then he was drafted to the San Francisco 49ers as quarterback. Now he didn't pan out. I think he moved around the league for 3 or 4 years. But let me tell you about Jeff Brom. He makes about $4 or $5 million a year being the head coach of Purdue, because he's the head coach of Purdue Boilermaker. So I think it's a little bit different. You're still got a whole bunch of incredible athletes, right? So I guess they have a little bit more wiggle room to mess with people. But I was burnt out. But let me say this: in pro wrestling, I never was around. The one thing I never knew about or understood in pro wrestling was any kind of politics. I thought it was just a beautiful, like, hey, you go and you do your best and you kick ass, and this is what you do. So if you want that as a tease as well, I was leaving one sport to go to another sport because I was over the politics. so guess what? I mean, the next time we're going to be talking about WCW, we're going to be talking about politics, and we'll have some fun.
I'm excited. By the way, did you ever find out, Erik, who tipped off Sports Illustrated?
No, I mean, my camp was 100% sure it was Howard Schnellenberger. They just said that, because he's the only one the pros would probably call him to ask him about his how he felt about me, and so, at that point too, and when I found that out, it kind of hurt me again, but not too much, because I don't know where Schnellenberger's head was, because Schnellenberger also knew that, it wasn't like I was 5 years of practicing as number one or number two. He had this up and down, up and down, up and down. So every time he would get upset, he'd take the bottom 3 quarterbacks, he'd sit them, and all you do is be running the other team's offense against the number one defense. I mean, that's all you were doing, right? So I'm still going to all the meetings, I'm still getting all this, but I'm not running with the teams. So it's not like I had a maturation process of 5 years. I had a glimpse. So who knows? if he was the one that said it, he might have said it to go like, well, if I put my stamp of approval on him, then they're going to say he's a good quarterback. And I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. I've just effed with him for the last 5 years. So I know how good he could be, and he looks good, but so he might not want to put his stamp on approval because they may take it like, okay, well, I mean, he's got 5 years under Howard Schnellenberger. But yeah, I got 5 years of a roller coaster ride, right? So I don't know if it happened. I don't know why it happened. And again, going back to things that I told you before, I don't care. I don't. My mom and taught me very young, that life is so short, so precious, right? And before you know it, if you're sitting there just hounding on the what ifs, you're wasting whatever time or years you have left on this earth about the what ifs. And then one day you're gonna start hounding yourself on, why did I worry about the what ifs? Like if you spend 10 years going, oh my gosh, it could be so different, right? And then you turn in your 40s, you go, it could be so different. And then when you hit 50s, you go 50 to 60, you go, why did I go through my 40s wondering about what if? And then you hit 60, it's like a bad domino effect. So you don't want to do that.
That's right, Eric. And last question about your football career.
Okay.
You mentioned to me, and this is something that I'm really curious of. That's why I say this for last. You mentioned how after college football, you wanted to know what it was like playing for the NFL.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that you were always a Cowboys fan, and that's something that you wanted to do, and you got the call from Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Now, when he offered you the 1 year to go to the USFL and then you would go to the Cowboys after that,
yeah,
it seemed to me like that was pretty much a guarantee that if you did 1 year in the USFL, that you were going to be able to live that dream of becoming a Dallas Cowboy on America's team. So my question is, why did you bypass the USFL, effectively giving up your Dallas Cowboys career?
Well, okay, so nothing in life is promised. Number one. Number two, there's no piece of paper that someone's going to sign that would guarantee me that, right? So if he sent me to the USFL, and again, I'm not saying this for any other reason. I could have got hurt at the USFL, whatever. But also too, okay, so that was like 92-ish, right? I don't know how long was Jimmy Johnson gone the next year, because he was gone shortly after that.
I'm gonna do a little research right now while you're talking.
Yeah, so I don't know what years he left. Things change all the time. Rosters change all the time. It was a phenomenal call, and it was cool and neat and all this, but it didn't mean anything to me, not in a bad way. Just I would not have chose to do that in the first place. I would have chose to go to Tampa or Cleveland. Matter of fact, I was really excited about the being behind DeBerg, because I thought DeBerg was one of the more knowledgeable quarterbacks of that time. Did you find about Jimmy Johnson?
I did find it, actually. When I go to the Cowboys portion of his career, he was the head coach from 1989 to 1993.
Okay, so I was Pro Wrestling Illustrated Rookie of the Year '92. So my point is that I know what I'm saying. Then I would have gone to the USFL, and when I would have come back in '93, he's gone. That, and I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's just I wasn't going to put my dice on that. If I was going to put my dice on it, I would have gone to one of the two teams that were vying to bring me in as a free agent quarterback, and I thought my best bet would be under someone like a DeBerg. I didn't want to go where there was a rookie starting. I wanted to go where there was someone that was only going to play a year or 2 or 3 years. Now, listen, because there's going to be other quarterbacks other than me vying for the job. But I just knew if I could get around the people that would teach me, then I'll let everything else take its toll. So I didn't walk out on it. I just there's been a time or two where I go because I could have gone and given a shot per se at football, and then if it didn't work out, go give it to wrestling or something like that if that's what I wanted. But I also wanted to I don't know. I was just driven. So who knows? I mean, Georgia Pacific is here. These Fortune 500 companies are here. There's people that I can go to work immediately for. I got pro wrestling. Like I said, let's not get to remember that question, and let's pick up that question on the next interview, because I think I can answer that at the beginning of the next interview, without giving it away.
Okay, the final question I just asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this would be a question for the next interview as well. I remember you said the politics of football and everything in it. Is it possible that the politics of football itself maybe kind of got you thinking about maybe I don't want to do the NFL since I know of all the politics that already exist within the sport itself?
No, that's exactly. I mean, that's exactly. I'm not. Look, I'm not trying to be sour on a game. I was just so tired at that point that at the very end I get the Sports Illustrated thing that happens and this, and I'm like, you know what? I I I don't have to push a square through a round hole, right? I don't. I mean, like life, it. I would like to have tried, but I don't have to sit there and beat myself up about trying or not trying. I made a decision, and the decision was, I don't think I want to play anymore. And just because it's clearly, and I'm not saying this about athletes. I got to imagine in my life, 99% of the time, I hope the people you see on the field are the best people at that position. I mean, I want to believe that, but I also been around athletics enough that if someone holds a grudge against you, you do something wrong, they start pouting about it, and before you know it, if they got any pull in the office, they can say, oh, I don't really see that in him. I don't see that, and they'll take their time to pick someone apart. A wide receiver coach. If he doesn't like you because his star wide receiver doesn't like the quarterback, then this wide receiver coach is going to start picking on this quarterback because he wants to stay favored with the wide receiver. But he's very careful because, oh my gosh, what if the head coach likes quarterback? Well, I'll just pick on him to the quarterback coach. I mean, it's just so much politics. I watched it. I mean, I watched coaches get together on the way back from practice. Oh, I don't see what the head coach sees in that son of a gun, or I don't see. I hear it all the time, or recruits all the time. So it's no different than life. It's no different than life. I just at that point was exhausted, and I was a person in which put myself in a scenario where I had more than one option in life. I didn't have to play football. I didn't have to pro wrestle. I didn't. I am an entrepreneur. I can start businesses. I can run businesses. I know what I'm doing. What I would like to do, yes, I would have liked to have a fair shot and be in it and give my best and know that if I lost, it's because someone beat me. I'm good with that. If someone beats me, I'm good. I'm good,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm fine with it. So, like I said, we'll get into it more. I think the more we go through these series, you're going to see the same theme of me, right? Because there was a time in pro wrestling that I made the same decision. I'm not going to sit here and stick a square through a round peg. I'm just not going to do it. I don't have to do it. So I would love to be all that I could be if allowed, but I'm not going to sit there and play games forever. Why? I mean, I got other things to do, right? So maybe you'll see the same theme, and then you'll go, oh, you know what? That reminds me of the story of high school, or I remember that the story of college, or I remember the same person raised by the same people, living and breathing the same way.
Awesome. And you know what? The next interview that you're speaking of here, I'm actually working the screen share here. I'm going to see if I can get this to work right now so I can show everybody. Let's see if it pops up there.
Yeah, it popped up for a second.
All right, hold on. There we go. Is it up there now? All right. This
That's
is what
that's crazy. That believe it or not, that jacket, that's multicolored jacket, that they got on the WCW one, the one you got there. That was literally a jacket that I bought in Miami, Florida, um, in college, and it had number 13 on the back of it because that was my college number. And I had that jacket, and I come to WCW to find out, but the person didn't wear it out to the ring. To find out, Dustin Rhodes had almost the same jacket because there was a short time when that was like a really in leather jacket, but I'd actually bought that to wear a junior senior year in college when I was out at a really nice shopping place in Miami, Florida.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of cool.
So yeah, part two is going to be the WCW and WWF years. I mean, I'm really excited, and honestly, I can't even tell you what an honor it is to have the opportunity to conduct this interview with you. I mean, I'm humbled. I'm absolutely humbled, to be able to do this with you. And it really means a lot, and I appreciate it, and I know the fans do as well. And I got to tell you, this has been amazing, and what just such a phenomenal story in the first part, and this is only the first layer. I mean, as we mentioned, 4-part series. We did this one. We did the beginning. We're doing part two next time. Just for a teaser, part three. Man, oh, the TNA years.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm telling you, that's the one I'm honestly most excited about. I can't wait to rock and roll on that.
That's been fun.
And part number 4, actually, it's where you're at right now, life after professional wrestling, man.
Nice, nice. And again, the first series we both kind of knew it's a lot to Anytime someone says, "So what was it like living with Bill Watts?" I'm like, "So how much time do you have?" Right? So because there's just so much growing up, and I think that I think I would, I think I paint the picture much better on letting people understand how important of an influence my mother was, due to the fact that she was also the person that was there most often, not because my dad didn't want to be there, because my dad was busting his butt building a business, which so many parents do. That's one thing, I believe in. A lot of times you'll see a president and you'll go, wow, man, what a great president. And then in my life, the vice president so many times gets overshadowed. You don't know, I wonder back, like, I wonder how many presidents that were in history in which it was more the vice president that was holding the ship, stable, and then the president was going out there and doing all his promotional stuff, because my mom was such a great, great, great leader of the family, and took supporting my father as a wife and as a friend and as a partner so serious, and we saw all that, which just gave us ultimate respect for her and both people. So I just wanted to, I just want people to understand. I mean, it was outstanding having my father as a famous pro wrestler, and and I think the majority of my life and the friends I put around me, everyone was kind of so humble that he was just, he was Cowboy Bill Watts, but he was Eric's dad or Micah's dad or Joel's dad, just as well. So I'm gonna rock and roll, my man. We're gonna hook back up next Tuesday, correct?
Next Tuesday, I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I was going to ask you, can you hang out here while I sign us off, and then I'll go over the times with you real quick?
100%.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Eric. Much appreciated. And to all the fans over here, thank you so very much for watching and listening to episode number 314 of the Beyond the Ring with Big T Wrestling podcast for today, Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. And this was part 1 of the Eric Watts 4-part shoot interview. We just did part 1 in the beginning. Join us next Tuesday for part number 2, the WCW and WWF years. So there you go, guys. And I will see you next time, and so will Eric. And yes, there will be next time on our interview next week. Don't forget us, and we won't forget you. And of course, if you all want the best, and yes, I do mean the absolute best for all of your professional wrestling needs right here on the internet, right here on YouTube.com today. Always remember to think Beyond the Ring with Big T. And of course, everybody, always remember, never ever forget that I'm your host, Big T, with Erik Watts, and we will see you at the matches. Take care, everybody. I love you all. We'll see you next week.